we have a very smart guy. Listen, I don't know how far I can get into this alone. I would just suck this up. That didn't sound right. That sounded a little too sexual. Not that way. But like, I am into the nitty gritty. I am somebody that's been following Star Citizen for a very, very long time. Okay. There was a point at which we were shown server meshing at CitizenCon 2023, which is an event that Cloud Imperium, the company that's making Star Citizen, the game, the title, the everything game for us, where the engineers got on here and showed us server meshing, and it lit the community up. People were saying it was fake or this isn't real. And we've already talked about that. We've covered it here on the channel plenty. We've seen people discuss this, that we're devs, but now we've got a network engineer who made a video, only has 1.6 thousand subscribers, found by you, the algorithm, filled with peace and love and dance too. Lots of dance. You found this for us. And I watched the first few seconds and I thought, here is an actual network engineer discussing server meshing. So let's check it out.
I recently watched the Star Citizen panels about server.
Now, we don't have explosions here. Okay. So I just want you guys to know, this is a professional. You can already tell this man is a professional. You feel the aura, right? Like, look at this imbecile right here. Look at the smart dude. Okay, now look at the imbecile. Sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover, but sometimes you just kind of can. And in this instance, caveman, okay? Caveman. Okay? And somebody very smart. I will provide the entertainment, or as I call it, and this man will speak English. Okay.
Meshing from last fall, and I've been a backer since 2012. However, after seeing the replication layer and the server meshing demo, I really was quite shocked. Let me give you a little bit of background as to who I am and why I'm making this video. I've been in networking for 30 years. I got my first job in network operations in 1994. I've been working ever since in operations, engineering, architecture, and for the last 12 years I've been working.
Limitless says, is this like when some British guy comes on and says something in their accent that sounds very intelligible but perhaps may not be true? It could be, Limitless. I'm not quite sure.
In automation and software control of networks. Though. Why this is interesting to me is because I have seen a lot of talk about replication layer and about server meshing. I started watching some of the videos. I saw one reaction from a software engineer that was really
I missed you, Ash.
It's good to have you
back, buddy.
An aspect of this that has not been getting the coverage it deserves. So what I'd like to do today is spend just a few minutes. I'm not going to take a whole ton of your time, but I'd like to discuss the complexities and intricacies that come from the networking side of the house with this. So to begin that, we need to understand that graph theory is the core of networking. Now, graph theory is very straightforward. You have nodes, which are points in space, and then you have edges, and those connect to nodes. Graph theory is entirely about relationships. So when I was watching this, I had a slightly different take on what we need to keep an eye on moving forward. If we take a very simple graph, and we'll use this for our example today, there are two ways that a graph can be built. The first way is a tree. In this case, a left to right view, where there's a hierarchy of membership. This is what you saw on the screen in the demonstration. This is a representation of a graph of a simple network. There are ways to progress in this graph where you can actually loop endlessly. In a tree, you don't have that option. So with those two bits of knowledge, let's take this a step further. If your ship lands on a planet, you move from the orbit of Microtech to the Microtech city node, and then eventually down to the Microtech spaceport node.
Yeah, those are simple nodes.
And even then, you go into your hangar node. And each one of those transition requires changing a vertice in their graph. There are a couple of things that must be maintained for a graph to work effectively. Number one, in this case, it seems that it has to be hierarchical. It has to be a tree. Actually, it has to be multiple trees. You want Microtech to be a tree under Stanton, and then you want Pyro 1 to be a tree under Pyro. And effectively, a jump gate is a way to hand node trees between those two graphs. And that's where my concern lies with where we're going with Star Citizen. It's not.
Do you understand what he said there? That's very interesting. It's very interesting jumping from one system to the next. I should play that back for everybody.
About the function of changing the edges, moving them around.
According to the graph that he's
obviously incredibly complex and has never been done in the scale that would be needed for an online game like this, especially one where you're trying to do like FPS across the boundary, right? There's a reason there are loading screens, and this is it. The second piece is what happens at Jump Town? What happens when there's an event or a major battle? You eventually get to a point where the graph becomes indivisible in a meaningful way. If you take 10 ships and they all have multiple rooms and tons of weapons, even if you take each ship and give it, let's call it 20 internal zones, right? Each room is its own zone. You are in those individual zones reducing the computational complexity. However, at some point, all of that replication and that splitting ends up costing you more than you're gaining.
Yes.
Because you have to transmit that information, sync that information, and
all the
eventually
branches
get
of the
that
tree
information
to the source
to
root.
the end consumer, the player, the edge node, in a way that the player can understand it. And in a way that I can, change my shields before my ship blows up. So there is a finite ability to spread this out. The question is not what is the ability to spread it out. Really, the question is what is the ability to group it together. In my MMO experience, servers don't have issues when players are well distributed across their zones. I don't know if any of you remember, but way back in the day, there was the big Scarab event in WoW, where there was this huge event in one zone, and it totally blew up the servers for a little while. They got it working eventually, but the challenge they had to balance was total server population versus the percentage of that population that might be expected to congregate in one area. SIG will be able to divide that tremendously more than WoW could at the time. No question about it. What we should be focusing on is the group. The coordination between...
Which is hugely important for fleet battles, for the kind of fleet battles that we want.
Between all of those different zones.
Which is really, server meshing for me, one of the most important things, because I want those fleet battles.
All those different levels of the tree needs to happen somewhere.
You have so many people that
you have to
in a particular location
simplify the problem
amazing amount of computational power,
stack, which is a whole nother subject to talk about. It's this abstraction, right? From the very detailed, I took a step in the room this way, which no one else cares about, to I push the self-destruct button, which everyone else cares about.
Yes.
So there's a level of abstraction that goes on.
All right.
I have questions about this because I think from what I'm seeing, they're going to be able to get further along the line than anyone has. And I'm curious to see what the end state is, because this is not a simple problem. Really just boils down to two things. When we're testing, what we need to help the engineering team understand is, first of all, the obvious one. When does the tree break? I moved from X to Y and I saw a 30K, right? Effectively, that modification to the graph didn't complete properly. That's an obvious one. But the other one to keep our eye on here is, when do we as the end players start to feel the impact of clumping together? I really think that one of the best things we can do as a community is all these massive organizations that are out there. When we start testing the replication layer and eventually the server meshing, just have an org meeting, right? Get as many people as you can on one shard and get as many people as you can in one area.
Stress test.
Because we need to help them stress this out. Not in a combative way. This is us trying to understand at the same time.
I love that this guy's coming from this angle, not in a combative clickety clack, let's like throw shade and light the torches and, you know, not in that way, in a constructive way. I like this dude. He's right. I love this dude because eventually it'll help out Cloud Imperium more that way. People are more constructive about how they're doing this. I love it.
And they're trying to understand. So none of this should be taken as me saying they're going to fail, they're horrible. I can't even really comprehend the work they're doing. It's so
help them with the work.
Amazing to me.
Right.
We just need to find ways as a community that we can partake in this and not just...
Holy God, this guy. Yes. And partially what I'm going to say is the way it's structured now and how we go into tiers is almost counterproductive to the stress test. And I think those of us who have been around long enough understand how we are testing the PTU, okay? Going in waves, right? It's almost like going against what this guy's trying to say, because while going in waves, I kind of understand you're giving like privilege to those people that are supporting the most and ranking it by tier system. I understand economically what they're doing. You know, when it comes to the actual development of the game, I think it actually limits it and prevents from proper stress testing. Okay, so like it would involve like everybody all at once at one place able to do it in the PTU before it hits the PU. That in my mind would be optimal. But then you're going to have people that have been backing for the longest time that want the special privilege, and I understand that argument. I get that are not going to understand what it is that I'm trying to get across, and in agreement with this gentleman here. The more people in a place propagated and testing and basically doing a stress test will eventually help people work on people in SIG, developers, engineers, get server meshing out the door in the manner in which we can have these large fleet battles and much more than that. You guys saw those graphs, like ridiculous how much it's all tied together.
Passively sit back and complain that it isn't moving quick enough. This is the most ambitious private sector change in the way we operate as a community I've ever seen. Think of this like the metaverse, only not stupid. The concept here that they are building towards is not just a space MMO. If they get this right, then down the road, they can sell Blizzard a solar system. And Azeroth can be there with its own rules, its own code, its own capabilities, because in the graph structure, that branch is managed, well, now by Microsoft. But you get my point, right? Yes, this is a space simulation. But
this is why I keep telling people out there, everybody, fans of Star Citizen content creators, since the very inception, since the very beginning of this project, that I don't think truly 90% of people that are involved in any which manner with Star Citizen understand the scope. That's why I am the person who said this is the everything game, so that people understood that. That can be memed. People can make fun of that. But I think it's a worthy thing. I think you need people that are dreamers, that are leaders, that will take us there and not accept no for an answer and continue to push forward, which I think Chris has done a really good job at. The fact that he's still involved and still working and still striving to make this game for us and do impossible things. And some people go, oh, well, server meshing's a thing, and server meshing's been done for DG. You don't know what you're talking about. This isn't anything revolutionary. Hell yes, it is. Hell yes, it is. On this scale, with this, what we're trying to do, yes, it is. The scale is immense and huge. And what we expect from the everything game is that we can have thousands of people that are playing at the same time, having fleet battles. It's the whole point of what we're trying to do here. It's not going to be easy to do. And that's why you'll see all the clickbait videos and, oh, this is never going to happen and there's no progress, blah, 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 because those people truly do not understand the scope. They just want to monetize you.
But what they're building is so much more. I cannot even put it into words. The cross-pollination
that this is going to
have, that'll ripple across the industry, will be quite profound, even though it's been 12 years since I first contributed. And yes, they have made no end of mistakes. I am not trying to be an apologist.
Yep.
But at this point, they have rebuilt my level of confidence in their work.
Yep.
And they've shown their work
Oh, this
enough.
guy's got it. Oh, my goodness. Somebody give this guy some flying lessons. I'm so sorry to see this, man. He is not really piloting this thing. Like, I'm feeling like a low level of confidence right now.
But I think they are onto something massive. I see so many people in this community go, oh, just get a bigger switch, or, well, maybe they should upgrade to 10 gig. And as a networking person,
I can't stop focusing on the flying right now.
Just stop that.
I can't stop focusing on the flying.
Level of problem they're trying to solve has baffled since the Enlightenment. This is not simple stuff they're doing. Frankly, I can't believe they have the guts to try it. So please don't
listen to any more words now. I've gone numb.
All right, that's enough for this.
All right.
This is my first video.
Listen, he might not be an expert pilot, okay? We all saw it, okay? He might not be an expert pilot, okay? But that does not mean that the words that came out of his mouth did not have some merit. Okay, God damn it. Pepe, can we cut this flying out? I mean, for God's sake.